Hello, everyone. Thank you for checking out this episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny, and I'm here with.
Hi, I'm Barney from Parable Games, creators of Shiver, the crazy, strange role-playing game.
And speaking of Shiver, what are we talking about today?
So today I wanted to talk to you about our newest Kickstarter that we've got coming up very soon on the 1st of March for Shiver Gothic, which is our delving deep into the world of Gothic horror and bringing those classic horror stories to the tabletop with the Shiver RPG.
Excellent. So, horror is a big umbrella. Um, how did it get from Shiver to Shiver Gothic? What led to that direction?
So we identified quite early that obviously horror is this massive umbrella of things that people could want to play. So we started off with the broad brushstroke that we took with Shiver of right, we want everybody to be able to play everything out of the gate. So how do you build a system where people can do that, which we did with Shiver, and then Gothic kind of came with a combination of right, what genre do we think is the most appealing to people? What when people think of horror, what do they think of? It's like Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, proper classic horror, so horror that almost borders on fantasy, like a scarier fantasy. So that was kind of in the back of our minds while we were thinking about what we wanted to write, and that kind of collided with the world that my brother had written for us to test Shiver in a longer form story. The original book, when we put it out, we'd done a lot of work designing it for one shots and shorter form stories so that you can tell that really condensed horror story. Whilst this is a much more sprawling epic. There's a whole campaign in the book, and it feels more like a horror TV show rather than a horror film.
So, for those that don't know or maybe are hearing about Shiver for the first time, how would you describe that role-playing game?
Sure. So Shiver is a role-playing game where you can play in any setting, any story, as long as there's something really weird going on. Like that thing doesn't necessarily have to be scary. It can be. It can also be a bit pulpy. But as long as there's something weird going on, Shiver kind of lets you bring those stories to the table. We initially designed the game as a way for me, my brother, and our friends to play our favorite like bad horror movies and terrible B plots, and just sort of like try and make better decisions than the people you saw on the screen and see if you could survive that horror story. And that blossomed into a much more broader love letter to horror and horror stories as the game progressed. The breadth of characters you can play in Shiver is also massive, because it's setting neutral. All of the characters are designed around characters you would find in stories across time, from sort of ancient myth all the way up to modern novels and films. So there's a huge broad brush of characters that you can embody, but still that level of depth that you can get to that character that you want to build. The other unique thing about Shiver is it doesn't use any numerical dice. We tried to remove as much mathematics from the system as possible to make it really accessible. And so we have these really interesting symbolic dice that not only work as a mechanic for working out success and failure, but they also work as a role-playing aid.
Okay, so this is the second Shiver Kickstarter. How you're topping yourself, I guess you could say. What's going to be the difference when it comes to stretch goals or similarities compared to the first one?
Sure. So there's a few things that we're doing for this one that we didn't do before. With our first Kickstarter, we wanted to make sure that we didn't go too crazy with our stretch goals, make sure that we could absolutely deliver everything that we said we were going to give. And for this one, we're getting a bit more ambitious. So there's a load of other cool products that we wanted to do in our first Kickstarter and can now finally do. So we're doing a special edition cover for one of the books. We're going to be putting out some metal dice. We're going to be doing some special versions of the game dice themselves. We're going to have art prints. One of the things that we got as a big piece of feedback from the first Kickstarter is people really, really love the art. And so we wanted to make sure that people could have some art with their pledges to get up on their walls and sort of really engage with the art just outside of the game as well. In terms of stretch goals, we've got absolutely loads planned because we've built this huge setting and world and this huge story. There's actually just so many areas of the world that we've named and want to explore. And so providing we get far enough in, we'll be delving into all kinds of different areas of this Gothic city that we've built.
So the Shiver Gothic book, what are the, I guess you could say, the technical aspects of what's inside? Do you envision like how many pages it may be? What would be the chapter topics?
Sure. So there's 2 books in the Kickstarter. The main book is Shiver Gothic: Secrets of Spirehome, and that is most of the new mechanical rules for the Gothic world. So in there, you're going to find things like rules for playing as monsters. So if you want to take on the role of the Invisible Man or Dr. Frankenstein or a similar character from a Gothic world, we'll have abilities and backgrounds and archetypes for players to delve into on that front. We're also going to have some more rules for long form storytelling. So in the first game, we had the Doom Clock, this really fun mechanic that ticks away in the background. You make a bad decision, the clock ticks up, and suddenly the world's getting a lot worse. In Shiver Gothic, we have something called the Doom Calendar. And how the Doom Calendar works is you split your story into a variety of chapters, and each chapter you have a Doom Clock. And depending on what happens in that chapter, how far you progress the Doom Clock, maybe if you do something to affect the grander story, say you find a nest of vampires and you choose to sneak by rather than destroy it, maybe at the end of that chapter you find out that the Doom Calendar is going to tick up because you've left a nest of vampires unattended, and that's not going to be good for the citizens of the city. So some rules for longer form storytelling. Obviously, the massive foray of monsters, items, all the things that you're going to want for telling your Gothic stories. Then the other section of that book is the main Gothic story, which is The Secrets of Spirehome, this huge, sprawling mystery adventure contained within a Gothic walled city, sort of a very secluded society. Not much contact with the outside world until our story begins and things start to get a little bit interesting, and the once peaceful city is maybe not so peaceful anymore. The other book is The Disciples of Dregstone, which is an additional large adventure. And this book we actually came up with whilst we were playtesting. And our main playtest group, they're really good, but sometimes, you know what it's like with role players, getting people in the same room consistently, really difficult. And so we designed this second book as a companion to the first story that could either be inserted into the story as an additional chapter arc, so like a chunk that you could go into, or alternatively, you could make yourself some secondary characters, some lovable urchins of Oliver Twist style, and adventure in this secondary story with less players than you would have in your main story. So if you're missing somebody from your main group 1 week, you could still play your weekly session a person down. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on what that story is. We want to keep that kind of under wraps, but it's set underneath the city and uncovering even more of the city's history. And there'll be some mechanics and rules in there as well for characters and creatures that you'll find in that story.
So just so our viewers are clear, if they're new to or just hearing about Shiver for the first time, do they need to get the first book to play? Is it
Yeah, so the Shiver core book has all of your core rules, and then all of these other books will have additional rules and additional stories, depending on which bits you really fancy playing. If you really fancy playing the main Gothic campaign, then you can grab that and you can grab your core rulebook and you're good to go. If you just fancy exploring underneath the city, you can grab Disciples of Dregstone. But the core rulebook and also all of the books that we had available in the first Kickstarter will be available in this Kickstarter as well. So you'll be able to grab whatever it is you fancy from the selection of Shiver products that we're starting to amass. Whatever suits your kind of like horror and story needs.
So what's been your favorite elements or part of this project? Is there something that that you were like you were very happy to work with, thematically, or just cool monsters, a specific cool monster?
Yeah, so I think Gothic horror is one of my sort of preferred genres of horror. I'm not a big like really scary fan. So like Gothic horror for me is I like it. There's a lot of unseen fear and lots of suspense. Also a lot of mystery, which I really really liked. In terms of elements that I really enjoyed, we've been playtesting this world and this story for almost as long as we've been designing Shiver. So I've been playing a story in this world for years, and so there are actually characters that me and some other playtesters have played who feature as NPCs in the book. We have cool quest givers. We have a variety of different abilities that have spawned from a player asking, "Oh, could I do this?" So yeah, there's a lot of the world has been fleshed out by sort of our messing around under the guise of my brother. So that's been really good. In terms of the mechanical stuff, I've really really enjoyed doing the design for playing as monsters. In particular, I really really have enjoyed the mad scientist that we've designed, which is kind of your Dr. Frankenstein style character, but there's a number of ways you can play them. You don't just have to be stitching together body parts. There's a load of other mad science that you could be doing. So that's been a lot of fun.
Oh, excellent. So this will be out was it like late February, in March?
So March 1st is the Kickstarter date. We'll be running through the month of March, and then hoping to fulfill sometime the year after.
Excellent. So is there anything about this project that you want to share that I haven't asked you about?
Ooh. So I'd say people who are maybe apprehensive about playing a role-playing game that has the horror tag attached to it, fear not. When we first started designing the game, I too was apprehensive about playing a horror game, and actually, Shiver and horror itself is very broad, and you can take it in any direction you want. So the system works amazingly for anything where weird stuff's going on. And so if you have a fantasy story with a slightly dark edge, or you have a sci-fi story with a dark edge, then Shiver works really well for that. It doesn't just have to be hardcore axe murderers all the time. So if you're maybe a little bit apprehensive about picking up a horror RPG, definitely take a look at Shiver. I think you'll really enjoy it. And we're just really excited to get this world that we built out there for people to play in. We're really excited to be working with another talented artist to join, Ben, and also we have another writer who's now working with us. So we're really looking to expand Shiver and add more content as we go forward, because that's another question we had in the first Kickstarter was, is Shiver going to be a one and done project? Are you going to put a book out and then there's going to be nothing more forever? And we have loads planned. So if you're looking for a new and interesting system to sink your teeth into, fear not, we have more stuff coming even after this Kickstarter. So
one last question. I noticed that the tentative art for Shiver Gothic is very similar to the style of the first book. Is it? Are you keeping the same art team for the new book?
Yes, the new book's got the same art team. We've brought in an additional artist who has been doing some of our landscapes to get the city really, really sort of vivid in people's minds. Gothic architecture obviously is a very sort of flamboyant and ostentatious beast. So we wanted to find somebody who really loved drawing cathedrals and the ilk, and get them to sort of help us bring Spire Home, the city, to life. So yeah, we're keeping the same art team, but we have slightly tweaked the art style. You'll see a lot of red, a lot of moons, a lot of misty greys, and we're playing with a limited color palette to really bring that sort of gothic feel up and get that, those like in your classic horror novels, those nice sort of black and white horror woodcuts and things like that. We're playing with all of those kind of ideas and sort of slightly tweaking the art style, but making sure that it's still true to the style that people really enjoyed from the first book.
All right, excellent. So viewers, yeah, March 1st, this will be released. I'll put a link now in the description so that if you want to go ahead and get notifications about it when it's released, you can do so. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us about this. This is great. I'm glad that Shiver is continuing. I love the art style of that book. And yeah, to our viewers out there, thank you for watching. Stay safe, get your shots. We'll see you soon. Take care.